She asked him to fix a gate. The rancher never expected the truth behind her words. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the wide-open fields of the countryside. Jack, a rancher in his late 40s, was finishing his daily chores. His hands were rough and calloused from years of working with livestock and repairing fences, but he took pride in every scratch and scar. Today had been a long day. He had fed the cattle, fixed a broken water trough, and mended a section of fence near the creek. Despite the exhaustion, there was a quiet satisfaction in the air. This ranch had been in his family for generations, and he felt a deep connection to the land, the animals, and the rhythm of rural life. As he wiped the sweat from his brow and leaned against the wooden gate of his property, Jack noticed movement on the dirt road that led up to his ranch. At first he thought it was a neighbor on an evening stroll, which was not unusual, but as the figure came closer he realized it was a woman he had never seen before. She was walking cautiously, almost hesitantly, and carried a small bag in one hand. There was a certain tension in her movements, a quiet urgency that made Jack's curiosity stir. "Hello!" she called out softly when she reached the edge of the fence. Her voice was polite, calm, and carried a hint of nervousness. "Are you Jack?" Jack nodded, wiping his hands on a rag. "That's me. Can I help you?" He studied her for a moment. She looked to be in her 30s, dressed in simple, practical clothes that suggested she had been traveling. Her brown hair was tied back neatly, and her eyes had a mix of determination and hesitation. There was something in her gaze, an unspoken story, but Jack didn't press. People in these parts often carried heavy burdens silently. Her fingers fidgeting with the strap of her bag. "It's my gate. It's broken, and I can't fix it on my own. I was hoping maybe you could take a look." Jack straightened, curiosity growing. He had repaired countless gates in his life, some simple, some stubborn and stubbornly old. This request seemed ordinary, yet there was something about the way she spoke, quiet, almost vulnerable, that made him pause. "Sure," he said after a moment.
"I can take a look. Lead the way." They walked down a narrow dirt path that led to a property just beyond the next hill.
As they approached, Jack could see the gate she had mentioned. It was old and weathered, its wood faded by sun and rain, and the metal hinges were rusty. From a distance it didn't look too complicated, but Jack knew that appearances could be deceiving. "Did it break recently?" he asked, kneeling to inspect the hinges. "It's been like this for a while," she admitted. "I tried fixing it myself, but I just couldn't. I don't know much about gates or fences, and I didn't want to make it worse." Her voice carried a hint of frustration, but also relief that someone was there to help. Jack smiled gently.
"Don't worry. This happens more than you think."
"Let me see what we're working with." He ran his hands along the wood, checking for rot and weakness, and examined the hinges carefully. As he worked, he noticed the care she had taken despite her lack of experience. She had tried to secure it with ropes and scraps of metal, and it was clear that she hadn't given up easily. While he worked, they began to talk.
"So, how long have you lived around here?" Jack asked casually.
"Not long," she replied, keeping her eyes on the gate as if to hide the tension in her face. "I moved here a few months ago." Jack nodded. "It's a quiet place. Takes some getting used to if you're from the city." She smiled faintly. "I suppose I'm still getting used to it." There was a pause, filled only by the sounds of the countryside, the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze, the distant lowing of cows, and the occasional chirping of birds. Jack liked these moments of quiet. They allowed for reflection and observation. And he noticed small details about her, the way her hands trembled slightly as she held herself steady, the way her eyes darted toward the horizon as if seeking something unseen. "You know," Jack said carefully, "gates are trickier than they look. Sometimes the problem isn't the wood or the hinges. It's how long it's been left unattended."
He paused, then added, "Sometimes it's just life catching up with you."
She looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and surprise. You sound like you understand." Jack shrugged. "I've been around a long time." People and places, they both need attention, care, and sometimes a little fixing now and then. The conversation felt natural, yet there was an unspoken depth to it. Jack couldn't tell exactly why, but he felt a pull to know more about her, to help more than just with the gate. Something in her presence reminded him that life wasn't always straightforward. Even the simplest requests could carry hidden stories. He got up from his inspection and looked her in the eyes. "All right, I think I can fix this, but it's going to take some time." "You sure you want me to do it right now?" "Yes, please," she said earnestly. "I've been worried about it for days." "I don't want anyone or anything getting hurt because of this gate." Jack nodded, understanding more than she could know. He grabbed his toolbox from the back of his truck and got to work, his hands moving efficiently, fixing the rusted hinges and reinforcing the worn wood. He watched silently, occasionally offering small gestures of thanks or a helpful suggestion, though she mostly stayed out of his way. As the sun continued to set, casting long shadows over the field, Jack felt a quiet respect for this woman. She wasn't just asking for a favor. There was courage in her eyes, a determination to protect something she cared about deeply. And that made him even more determined to help. By the time the first stars appeared in the sky, Jack had repaired the gate so that it swung smoothly and securely. He stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow, and looked at her. "There," he said simply. "Good as new. Should hold up for years if you take care of it."
Her face lit up with relief and gratitude.
"Thank you," she whispered. I don't know how to repay you."
Jack shook his head.
"No repayment needed. Just make sure it stays closed when you need it, and everything will be fine." As they walked back toward the main path, Jack realized that this had been more than a simple task. There was a story behind her request, a reason why she came to him specifically. And he had a feeling that this encounter was only the beginning of something much larger, something neither of them could have anticipated when she first asked for help with the gate. For the first time that evening, as he watched her walk away along the dirt road, Jack felt a spark of curiosity and concern. There was a truth behind her words, something she hadn't said yet, and he had a strong feeling it would change both of their lives before long. The countryside was quiet again, the soft rustle of the wind through the trees blending with the distant calls of nocturnal animals. Jack leaned against the gate he had repaired, feeling the weight of the day and the subtle tension of the unknown. Sometimes, he thought, life's simplest requests hide the deepest stories, and he had a feeling he was about to discover one of them. After the gate was repaired, Jack returned to his ranch, feeling the familiar ache in his arms from the day's labor. The golden glow of the setting sun had faded into a calm twilight, and the ranch seemed to breathe with a quiet stillness. The animals were settling down for the evening. The cows were lowing softly in the distance, and the horses stamped their hooves gently in the paddock. Jack poured himself a glass of water, wiped his hands on his worn shirt, and leaned against the fence thinking about Clara. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her story. Something in her eyes, the careful way she carried herself, suggested that she was carrying a weight, a burden that went beyond a broken gate. Jack had spent his whole life reading people, neighbors, ranch hands, and friends alike. He knew that some people put on brave faces, but their eyes always told the truth. Clara's eyes had told him that there was worry, fear, and maybe even loneliness behind her polite words. The next morning, Jack found himself thinking about her as he fed the cattle and checked the fences. When he saw the dirt path leading to her property, he wondered if she had managed to keep the gate secure overnight. He knew it wasn't his business to check, but something made him curious. Later that day, as he was mending a section of fence that had been loose since the last storm, he saw her again. Clara appeared at the edge of his property, hesitating before stepping forward. "Hello, Jack," she said softly. I hope I'm not bothering you." Jack shook his head. "Not at all. I was just working on the fence. How's the gate holding up?"
"It's perfect," she replied, her relief evident in the small smile she gave him. "I can't thank you enough for yesterday."
I didn't realize how much I needed help until you came. Jack nodded, brushing a bit of dirt off his hands. Sometimes it's easier to ask for help than to struggle alone, he said. No shame in it. Clara's eyes met his, and for a moment, the quiet between them spoke volumes. She seemed to hesitate, as if deciding how much to reveal. Then, taking a deep breath, she said, "Would you maybe help me with a few other things around the ranch sometime? I don't know much about maintaining the property, and there are still things that need fixing." Jack considered her words. Helping wasn't just about physical labor. It was about trust and guidance. He could see that she genuinely wanted to learn, not just rely on someone else to do all the work. "I can help," he said finally. "I'll show you how things work, but you have to promise me you'll pay attention." Ranch work isn't just about strength. It's about understanding the land, the animals, and the tools you use. She smiled a little shyly. "I promise. I really want to learn." And so, over the following days, Jack began spending more time with Clara. Each morning he would rise before the sun, as was his routine, and make his way to her property to teach her the basics of ranch work. He showed her how to repair fences properly, how to check for weak spots in the wood, and how to oil the hinges so gates wouldn't rust. He explained the importance of keeping the animals safe and comfortable, and how small mistakes could lead to bigger problems. Clara absorbed everything with a mixture of determination and careful attention. She made mistakes, of course. Sometimes she hammered a nail crookedly, or tied a rope too loosely, but she never gave up. Jack admired her persistence. There was something about her spirit that reminded him of why he had chosen this life. The satisfaction of seeing hard work pay off, the quiet pride in a job done well, and the unexpected rewards of helping someone grow. As they worked together, their conversations grew deeper. Jack learned that Clara had recently moved to the countryside after losing her parents unexpectedly. She had inherited the small ranch from her family but had struggled to keep it in order. Bills, repairs, and the sheer amount of work had overwhelmed her. She hadn't asked for help before because she didn't know who to trust, and because she didn't want to admit that she couldn't handle everything on her own. Jack listened without judgment, nodding quietly. He didn't need to offer solutions right away. Sometimes people just needed someone to hear them. He shared stories from his own life, the challenges of keeping the ranch running, moments of failure, and times when he had learned to rely on neighbors for support. Clara listened intently, and Jack could see that she felt a little less alone. One afternoon, as they were repairing a particularly stubborn section of fence, Clara paused and wiped the sweat from her forehead. "I never realized how much work goes into a ranch," she said, laughing softly. "It's exhausting, but satisfying in a way I didn't expect." Jack chuckled. "It is. It's hard work, but you learn to respect the land and the animals. And there's a certain peace in it, too. You'll feel it eventually." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting gratitude.
I already do. Even though it's hard, having someone guide me makes all the difference.
Over the next few weeks, their bond grew naturally. Jack admired Clara's determination, and she appreciated his patience and guidance. They faced small challenges together: a gate that refused to swing, a stubborn mule that refused to cooperate, and fences that needed constant attention. Each problem taught Clara a lesson and strengthened their connection. Jack began to realize that helping her wasn't just about physical labor. It was about trust, friendship, and understanding. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, they finished securing a fence along the far edge of her property. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the air was filled with the sounds of the countryside settling into night. Clara turned to Jack and smiled, a genuine warmth in her eyes. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said softly. Jack shrugged, feeling a little self-conscious about the praise. "You did most of the work yourself." "I just showed you how," she shook her head. "No, you did more than that. You helped me feel like I can handle this. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Jack felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense that their efforts together had created something more than a repaired gate or mended fence. There was trust forming between them, a bond built on respect and shared experiences. And beneath that, he sensed there was a deeper story, one that Clara hadn't fully told him yet. That night, Jack returned to his own ranch, feeling the weight of both the day's labor and the subtle tension of curiosity. He couldn't stop thinking about Clara, about the quiet strength she had shown, and about the unspoken truths behind her words. The gate had been just the beginning. There was more to her story, and Jack had a feeling that discovering it would be more challenging than any fence or gate he had ever repaired. As the days passed, Jack continued to help Clara while she grew more confident in her abilities. He noticed small changes in her demeanor. Her posture was straighter, her movements more assured, and her eyes held a spark of determination that hadn't been there when they first met. She laughed more freely, asked questions without hesitation, and began to take initiative in repairing and maintaining the ranch. One afternoon, after finishing a long day of work, Clara offered Jack a glass of lemonade she had made. They sat together on a weathered bench overlooking the fields, watching the cows graze and the horses wander lazily in the distance. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with mutual understanding. "You know," Clara said thoughtfully, "I never realized how much a place like this can teach you. It's not just about work, it's about patience, care, and noticing the little things." Jack nodded.
Exactly. Life on a ranch teaches you lessons every day.
Sometimes it's through the work itself, sometimes it's through the people you meet. Clara smiled, a quiet warmth in her expression. "I'm glad I met you, Jack. I feel like I can handle things now, even when it's hard." Jack felt a surge of respect and admiration for her. He realized that their relationship had shifted from a simple favor to something deeper. Helping her had opened a door to understanding, trust, and perhaps even friendship. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that he would continue to support her, and that their shared experiences had already created a bond neither of them could ignore. As night fell over the countryside, Jack returned home once again, reflecting on the unexpected journey that had begun with a simple request to fix a gate. What had started as a small favor had turned into a connection that was teaching both of them about life, resilience, and the importance of trusting others. And in the quiet of the ranch under the twinkling stars, Jack felt certain that the next chapter of this story would reveal truths neither of them had anticipated. Days turned into weeks, and Jack continued to spend time with Clara, helping her learn the ropes of managing her small ranch. Every morning he rose early, as he always had, and made his way to her property ready to tackle whatever needed fixing. Each day brought new challenges: a stubborn fence that refused to stay upright, a gate that squeaked despite oiling, or a fence post that had rotted faster than expected. But through it all, Clara showed a determination that surprised even Jack. She listened intently, asked questions, and applied everything he taught her. Slowly but surely, she was beginning to feel capable, more confident in her abilities. Yet despite their growing connection, there remained an unspoken tension between them. Jack could sense it, subtle but persistent. Clara seemed hesitant to talk about certain things. She would sometimes glance off into the distance, as if weighing her words or holding back a story she wasn't ready to tell. Jack respected her space, knowing that trust couldn't be rushed. Still, he couldn't ignore the feeling that there was something important she hadn't shared, something behind the simple request to fix a gate. One late afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows over the fields and the air was warm with the fading heat of the day, Clara approached Jack while he was repairing a section of fence. There was a seriousness in her eyes he hadn't seen before. "Jack," she said softly, "I think it's time I tell you the real reason I asked for your help." Jack paused, leaning on his hammer. He looked at her attentively, sensing that this was a moment he needed to be fully present for. "All right," he said gently. "Take your time." Clara took a deep breath and began to speak. She explained that her father, who had owned the ranch before her, had passed away unexpectedly a few years ago. His passing had left her with more responsibility than she could have imagined. The ranch, which had once been a place of family gatherings and joyful memories, had become a source of worry and stress. She struggled to manage the property alone. Fixing fences, caring for the animals, paying bills, and maintaining equipment had become overwhelming. I I didn't want to ask anyone for help at first, she admitted, her voice wavering slightly. I thought I could manage on my own. But the truth is, I couldn't. I was afraid that if I failed, everything my father worked for would fall apart. Jack listened quietly, letting her words sink in. He could feel the weight of her emotions, the fear, the anxiety, and the relief that came with finally sharing her burden.
Clara, he said after a pause, you don't have to carry this alone.
None of us do. It's not weakness to ask for help. It's wisdom. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. I just didn't know who to trust. I didn't want to let anyone down or have them see me struggle. Jack stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Asking for help doesn't take away from that. It shows that you care about the ranch and the life you're building. You've been brave to face all of this on your own so far, and now you don't have to do it alone anymore. Her eyes glistened with gratitude. Thank you, Jack. I can't tell you how much it means to hear that. From that moment on, their work together took on a new significance. It was no longer just about repairing fences or maintaining gates. It was about restoring hope, building confidence, and creating a sense of stability in Clara's life. Jack guided her through each task, explaining not just how to fix things, but why certain methods worked better than others. He showed her how to check for weak spots in the wood, how to maintain tools, and how to anticipate problems before they became emergencies. Clara absorbed every lesson, practicing diligently until she could handle the work on her own. She learned to trust her instincts and rely on the skills Jack taught her. There were moments of frustration, of course. Nails bent, boards splintered, and fences collapsed under unexpected strain. But each setback became a learning opportunity. Jack encouraged her, reminding her that mistakes were part of the process and that persistence was more valuable than perfection. As they worked side by side, Jack noticed subtle changes in Clara. She walked with more confidence, spoke with more assurance, and smiled more freely. The burden she had carried alone for so long seemed lighter now, shared with someone who understood and respected her struggle. And yet, beneath the progress and the laughter, there remained a quiet vulnerability, a reminder that the challenges she faced were real and that recovery would take time. One afternoon, after a particularly long day of repairing a fence along the edge of a creek, Clara finally opened up further. She explained that her father's ranch had been in debt when she inherited it and that she had been struggling to keep up with payments while maintaining the property. She spoke of nights spent worrying, unable to sleep, wondering how she would manage it all. The stress had been overwhelming, and for a time, she had considered giving up entirely. Jack listened attentively, never interrupting. He understood that these were heavy truths, but he also recognized the courage it took for her to speak them aloud. "Clara," he said gently, "you've come a long way already. You've faced every challenge head-on, and that's more than most people could do. I believe you can handle the rest too, with the right support." Her expression softened, a mixture of relief and gratitude shining in her eyes. "It's hard to believe that after everything someone else sees what I see, the potential in this place, the memories, and the future." Jack smiled. "I see it, and I'll help you protect it." From that day forward, their partnership grew stronger. Jack didn't just repair fences and gates. He helped Clara organize her property, plan her work, and manage her time efficiently. He introduced her to neighbors who could offer advice and assistance, creating a small network of support around her. Clara began to feel less alone, more capable, and gradually, a sense of confidence returned. Their conversations, once focused on tasks and practical matters, began to include deeper reflections. They talked about dreams, fears, and the lessons life had taught them. Jack shared stories from his own past, the challenges of running a ranch, the times he had failed, and the moments he had learned to rely on others. Clara listened closely, sometimes laughing at his anecdotes, sometimes reflecting quietly on their meaning. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat together on a bench overlooking the fields. The sky was painted with shades of orange and purple, and the air was filled with the gentle sounds of nature settling into night. Clara turned to Jack and spoke softly. I never realized how much a ranch could teach you. Not just about work, but about life, patience, and perseverance. Jack nodded. Exactly. Life on a ranch is full of lessons if you're willing to notice them. And sometimes the most important lessons come from the people around you. Clara looked at him with a smile, one that carried both warmth and a hint of vulnerability. I'm glad you came into my life, Jack. I feel like I can face the challenges now, not just because of what you've taught me, but because you believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Jack felt a deep sense of satisfaction and admiration. He realized that what had started as a simple request to fix a gate had transformed into something far more meaningful. It had become a journey of trust, understanding, and growth. Clara's courage had inspired him just as much as his guidance had helped her. As night fell over the countryside, Jack returned to his own ranch, reflecting on the events of the day. He understood now that the gate had been just the beginning, a doorway not only to a repaired fence but to a deeper story, one of resilience, trust, and human connection. He sensed that the truth Clara had shared was only part of the larger story yet to unfold, and he felt a quiet anticipation for the next chapter of their journey together. The stars twinkled overhead, and the ranch settled into a peaceful silence. Jack leaned against the gate he had repaired weeks ago, feeling the calm of the night and the subtle excitement of the unknown. He knew that the days ahead would bring new challenges, but he also knew that together he and Clara could face them. The simple favor of fixing a gate had revealed a truth that neither of them had expected, a truth that would continue to shape their lives in ways they could never have imagined. Over the next few weeks, Jack and Clara's daily routines became more than just chores and repairs. The early mornings, long afternoons, and quiet evenings spent together on the ranch began to form a rhythm that both of them found comfort in. Clara was learning faster than she expected, and Jack was impressed with her determination. She was no longer the hesitant woman who had first asked him to fix a gate. She had become capable, confident, and surprisingly resourceful. Each day brought a new set of challenges. One morning, Jack noticed that one of the fences near the pasture had been weakened by recent heavy rains. If it broke completely, the cattle could escape, creating a dangerous situation. He explained to Clara how to inspect the wooden posts, check the tension of the wire, and reinforce the supports. Clara listened carefully, mimicking his actions as he guided her hands and explained every detail. There were a few missteps, posts that leaned too much, wires that tangled, but Jack patiently corrected her, encouraging her with every step. By the end of the day, the fence stood firm, and Clara beamed with pride. You see? Jack said, wiping sweat from his forehead. You're getting the hang of this. That fence is solid now because of your hard work. Clara smiled, the sunlight reflecting in her hair. I can't believe I was afraid to try. It feels good, knowing I can actually do this.
Jack nodded.
It takes practice, patience, and persistence, and you've got all three. As the days passed, Clara began taking the initiative. She would arrive early, sometimes before Jack, to prepare for the day's tasks. She learned to anticipate what needed attention, whether it was a fence that might weaken during the next storm, a gate that needed lubrication, or a section of the barn that needed reinforcement. Jack was quietly amazed at how quickly she adapted. What had started as a simple request for help had turned into a partnership, a true collaboration where both contributed to maintaining and improving the ranch. But their growing bond wasn't only about work. Between the chores, they shared stories, laughter, and quiet reflections. One afternoon, as they repaired a section of the barn roof, Jack shared memories of his own childhood on the ranch. He told her about the times he had tried and failed, the lessons he had learned from his father, and the moments of pride that came from overcoming challenges. Clara listened intently, sometimes laughing at his humorous mistakes, sometimes reflecting quietly on the wisdom he offered. You know, Clara said one afternoon as they sat on the barn roof, watching the sunset, I never thought I'd feel so connected to this place. I thought it would just be work, stress, and worry. But now, it feels like it's mine again, in a way I didn't expect. Jack smiled, leaning back on his hands. That's the magic of hard work and care. You put your heart into something, and it starts to give back.
There were challenges that neither of them could anticipate. One day, a small section of the fence along the creek collapsed after a sudden storm.
Clara was discouraged, feeling that all her progress had been undone. Jack, however, saw it as a teaching moment. "It's not about never failing," he said gently. "It's about how you handle it when things go wrong, and you're going to handle it just fine. We'll fix this together." Together they worked tirelessly to rebuild the fence, reinforcing the posts and ensuring the wire was secure. Clara's hands were raw and scratched, but she refused to give up. By the end of the day, the fence stood stronger than before. She looked at Jack, exhausted but triumphant. "I couldn't have done this without you," she admitted, her voice sincere. Jack shook his head.
"No, Clara, you did this."
"I just helped guide you. You're the one who put in the work and made it happen." Through moments like these, Clara began to understand that strength didn't mean doing everything alone. It meant knowing when to ask for help, trusting others, and using the support she was given to grow stronger. Jack, in turn, began to see her as more than just a neighbor in need. She was a determined, capable woman who had faced hardship and refused to be defeated. Their bond was no longer defined by who was teaching and who was learning. It had become mutual respect and shared experience. One afternoon, as they worked on repairing a leaky water trough, Clara hesitated and asked Jack something that surprised him. "Do you ever get tired of doing all this work by yourself?" she asked. "I mean, it seems like you do everything for the ranch. Does it ever feel overwhelming?" Jack paused, considering her question. "Sometimes, yes," he admitted. "But it's also rewarding, and I've learned over the years that sharing the work makes it lighter. That's why I help you. And that's why I trust the neighbors and friends who support me when I need it. Life's easier when it's shared." Clara nodded thoughtfully, realizing the truth in his words. She had been so focused on managing everything herself that she had forgotten the value of sharing burdens and accepting support. Working with Jack had shown her that asking for help was not a sign of weakness. It was a way to grow stronger and more capable. As weeks turned into a month, Jack noticed a remarkable change in Clara. She no longer hesitated when faced with a challenge. She repaired sections of fence without prompting, fed the animals with confidence, and even suggested improvements for the property. Her laughter was more frequent, and her smiles were genuine. She carried herself with a quiet pride, and Jack felt a sense of fulfillment knowing he had helped her reach this point. Their partnership extended beyond physical work. They shared meals together after long days, sometimes sitting outside on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. They talked about life, family, and dreams for the future. Clara confided her hopes of expanding the ranch one day, making it a place that honored her family's legacy, while also providing a safe and sustainable home for the animals. Jack listened, offering encouragement and advice, but also letting her lead the conversation, showing that he trusted her judgment and vision. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat quietly on a hill overlooking the ranch. The sky was painted in deep shades of purple and orange, and the air was cool and calm. Clara turned to Jack and spoke softly. "I can't believe how much has changed since the day I first asked you to fix my gate. It feels like everything is coming together, piece by piece." Jack nodded, feeling a swell of pride and admiration. "You've done the hard work, Clara."
"I just helped guide you, but you've taken it and run with it."
"That's why it feels like it's coming together. Because it is." Clara smiled, a mixture of relief and gratitude in her expression. "I never realized how much I needed someone to believe in me, not just to help with the work, but to believe that I could handle it." Jack leaned back, looking out over the fields. "You were always capable. You just needed a little support to see it yourself. And now you can." Their bond continued to strengthen, built on trust, respect, and shared effort. Clara's ranch began to thrive under their combined care, and Jack found a quiet joy in seeing her confidence grow. The simple act of fixing a gate had led to something much deeper, a connection that taught them both about resilience, friendship, and the value of working together. Even the small everyday moments held meaning. Clara learned to anticipate problems before they happened, to recognize when animals were unwell, and to keep the ranch organized, and functional. Jack taught her not only the practical skills of ranch life, but also the importance of patience, observation, and careful planning. Together, they celebrated successes, learned from failures, and discovered a rhythm that made the hard work feel lighter. By the time the sun set each evening, Clara no longer felt overwhelmed by the ranch. She felt empowered, capable, and supported. And Jack, in turn, felt a sense of fulfillment he hadn't experienced in years. The work had brought them closer, not just as neighbors, but as friends who understood and respected each other deeply. One quiet evening, as they watched the stars emerge in the sky, Clara turned to Jack. "I don't know what I would have done without you. You didn't just help me fix things, you helped me believe in myself again." Jack smiled, a warm, quiet smile. "And you taught me something too, that even in the toughest moments people can rise to the occasion. You've shown me that strength comes in many forms." The night settled over the ranch, calm and peaceful. Jack reflected on how a simple favor, a request to fix a gate, had transformed into a journey of trust, growth, and connection. It had taught both of them lessons they would carry forward: that help is a gift, that persistence pays off, and that sharing burdens creates bonds stronger than any fence or gate could. As the stars twinkled above, Jack knew that this partnership was only growing stronger. They had faced challenges together, learned from mistakes, and celebrated successes. And though they had not yet seen all that life would bring, Jack felt certain that whatever came next, they would face it together, with trust, respect, and a shared sense of purpose. The ranch had changed, and so had Clara. The once overwhelmed woman who had nervously asked Jack to fix a gate had grown into someone capable, confident, and proud of her accomplishments. The fences were sturdy, the gates swung smoothly, the barns were well maintained, and the animals were healthy and cared for. But the changes were more than physical, they were emotional too. Clara had learned to trust herself, to accept help, and to believe in her ability to manage life's challenges. And Jack, too, had changed, discovering the quiet satisfaction of making a real difference in someone else's life. One morning, as the sun peeked over the horizon, Jack arrived at Clara's ranch to find her already at work, tending to the animals. She looked up as he approached and smiled warmly. "Good morning, Jack," she said cheerfully. "I was just checking the water troughs. I thought I'd get a head start before the day gets busy." Jack smiled back. "Looks like someone's becoming quite the ranch hand." Clara laughed softly. "I suppose I am. Thanks to your guidance, I've learned more than I imagined I could."
Jack walked alongside her as they made their way to the barn. "You've done all the hard work, Clara. I just helped guide you. The credit is yours."
As they worked together throughout the day, Jack noticed something remarkable. Clara no longer hesitated when faced with a task. She assessed problems quickly, made decisions confidently, and acted with purpose. Even when small challenges arose, a gate hinge that needed tightening, a fence post that had loosened, she handled them without doubt. Jack felt a quiet pride in her growth. The woman who had first come to him seeking help was now capable of managing her property with skill and determination. Their workdays continued, filled with both effort and laughter. They mended fences, repaired gates, tended to animals, and maintained the barns. During breaks, they would sit together, sharing stories and reflecting on the progress made. Clara would occasionally glance at Jack with gratitude, and he would respond with encouragement, reminding her that she had earned every accomplishment herself. One afternoon, while they were repairing a particularly stubborn gate at the far edge of the property, Clara paused and looked at Jack seriously. "You know," she said softly, "I think this gate, it represents more than just the ranch. When I first asked you to fix it, I didn't realize that it would also open a door to hope, confidence, and guidance. I feel like I'm finally seeing the possibilities in my life again." Jack nodded, understanding the depth of her words. Sometimes the smallest actions lead to the biggest changes. A repaired gate might seem simple, but it can symbolize trust, support, and new beginnings. Clara smiled, a warmth in her eyes that made Jack realize just how far she had come. "You didn't just help me fix a gate, Jack. You helped me find myself again. Jack felt a quiet satisfaction. The work they had done together had strengthened more than the ranch. It had strengthened Clara's confidence, resilience, and sense of purpose. He realized that the lessons they had learned together would last far beyond the fences and gates. As the weeks passed, Clara began to take full responsibility for her ranch, handling daily chores with skill and efficiency. She no longer needed Jack's constant guidance, though he remained a trusted friend and advisor. Their bond had transformed from teacher-student into a true partnership, built on mutual respect and shared experience. They celebrated small victories together, completing repairs, improving the property, and seeing the animals thrive. Each achievement reinforced Clara's confidence and her trust in herself. One evening after a long day of work, they sat on a hill overlooking the ranch. The sun was setting in brilliant shades of orange and pink, casting a warm glow over the fields and animals below. Clara turned to Jack and spoke quietly. "I don't think I ever thanked you properly, Jack. You didn't just help me manage a ranch. You helped me see that I could overcome challenges, trust myself, and move forward. I'll never forget that." Jack smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "Clara, the work you've done speaks for itself. You've grown stronger, wiser, and more capable. I just helped you along the way. You deserve the credit for everything." Clara shook her head, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and admiration.
I know I do, but I also know I wouldn't have made it this far without you.
You showed me patience, understanding, and guidance when I needed it most. That matters more than anything. Jack was quiet for a moment, reflecting on how far they had come. He realized that helping Clara had changed him as much as it had changed her. He had rediscovered the joy of sharing knowledge, the satisfaction of making a difference, and the beauty of seeing someone grow into their potential. What had begun as a simple act of fixing a gate had turned into a profound journey of connection, trust, and transformation. The following days brought more progress. Clara took on larger projects around the ranch, expanding the gardens, organizing the barn more efficiently, and even planning improvements to the pasture layout. Jack provided advice when asked, but he mostly watched with quiet pride as Clara applied her knowledge and skills independently. Her confidence grew with each passing day, and she began to envision a future for the ranch that honored her family's legacy, while also reflecting her own dreams. One bright morning, as they worked together to repair a section of fencing along the far pasture, Clara paused and looked at Jack thoughtfully. "I never thought a simple favor asking you to fix a gate would lead to all of this. I feel like I've regained control over my life, my ranch, and my future." "It's incredible." Jack nodded, understanding completely. Life has a way of surprising us. The smallest actions often lead to the biggest changes, and you did the hard work. I just helped guide you when you needed it. Clara smiled warmly. "I hope I can pass this on someday. Help someone else, guide them, and give them the confidence to grow. That's what you did for me, and I want to do the same for someone else." Jack's heart warmed at her words. "That's a good plan, Clara. The lessons you've learned here about work, trust, and perseverance can inspire others just as much as they've shaped you." Their days continued in this way, filled with meaningful work, shared laughter, and quiet reflections. Clara's ranch flourished, her confidence soared, and the bond between her and Jack strengthened with each passing moment. They had faced challenges, overcome obstacles, and built something lasting together. Not just fences and gates, but trust, friendship, and a shared sense of purpose. One evening, as they finished securing the last fence post on the property, Clara looked out over her land and breathed deeply. "I feel at peace," she said softly. "For the first time in a long time, I feel like I can handle anything that comes my way. The ranch feels alive again, and so do I." Jack nodded, a proud smile on his face. "You've earned that peace, Clara. You've worked hard, learned, and grown. The ranch is in good hands, and so are you." Clara turned to him, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you, Jack, for everything. Not just for fixing a gate, but for believing in me, guiding me, and helping me see my own strength." "I'll always remember this," Everything we've done together. Jack felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that their journey had reached a meaningful point. The simple request to fix a gate had led to a remarkable transformation. For Clara, for him, and for the ranch itself. It had shown them both the power of trust, patience, and shared effort, and it had reminded them that even the smallest acts of help and kindness could have profound effects. As night fell over the countryside, Clara and Jack sat together on the porch, looking out over the ranch they had nurtured and protected. The stars twinkled above, the animals were settled for the night, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of grass and earth. They sat in companionable silence, reflecting on the journey they had shared and the lessons they had learned. Clara felt a sense of gratitude that words could hardly express. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and overwhelming responsibility, but she had emerged stronger, more confident, and ready to embrace the future. And she knew that she could always rely on the support and friendship of someone who had guided her through the most challenging days. Jack, too, felt the impact of their shared journey. He had seen Clara grow from a hesitant, overwhelmed woman into a capable and self-assured rancher. He had learned that the act of helping someone could be transformative, not just for the person receiving guidance, but for the one offering it. And he realized that life's simplest moments, a request to fix a gate, a shared meal, a long day's work, could carry the greatest meaning. In the quiet of that evening, with the ranch peaceful and secure, they both understood the truth behind the journey they had shared. That trust, kindness, and patience could open doors to growth, friendship, and lasting change. The gate had been just the beginning, a symbol of a journey that had led to something far more significant than either of them had anticipated. And as the night sky stretched endlessly above them, they felt a deep sense of contentment, knowing that they had faced challenges together, built something meaningful, and created a bond that would endure for years to come.